She told me I should cancel my wedding, not because of money, not because of illness, but because my happiness might hurt my sister. My own mother said if I really loved my family, I'd give up the one day I had waited my whole life for. But instead of protecting me, she stood beside the sister who tried to sabotage everything, even going as far as texting my fiancé. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't yet, and let's get into it. When I think back to the night Ryan proposed, the memory feels like it's wrapped in a warm glow. It wasn't some elaborate event with fireworks or a crowd of people waiting to cheer us on. It was just the two of us in our little living room, the one we'd filled over the years with thrift store finds and framed photos from trips where we'd spent more money on gas than hotel rooms. Ryan had cooked dinner, his signature chicken parmesan, and we were sitting on the couch afterward, the TV humming low in the background. He shifted nervously, which I noticed immediately because Ryan doesn't fidget. He took my hand, and in that steady, sure way he always had, he told me there wasn't a day left in his life that he wanted to live without me. Then he pulled out a ring. I froze for a second, not because I didn't know what to say, but because every part of me already knew the answer. After 6 years together, Ryan was more than my boyfriend. He was my best friend, my anchor, the person who knew all my scars and still kissed them like they were precious. Tears blurred my vision as I nodded so hard my neck hurt, and I laughed through the tears as I said, "Yes. Of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto my finger, his hands trembling just slightly, and when I leaned in to kiss him, it felt like the world around us had gone completely still. For the rest of the evening, we barely talked about logistics. No venues, no dates, no budgets. Just us wrapped up in the dizzying joy of a promise finally made official. I went to bed that night staring at the ring, a simple solitaire that somehow looked more beautiful than anything I'd ever owned. I thought, this is it. My life is starting. The next morning I called my mom. I was buzzing, practically vibrating with excitement as the phone rang. She picked up on the third ring, her voice sharp like it always was when she wasn't expecting a call. "Emily. Everything okay?" "Everything's better than okay," I gushed. "Ryan proposed last night. We're getting married." "Mom." I grinned so wide my cheeks hurt, waiting for her joy to pour through the phone, for the tears or the high-pitched squeal that TV moms always gave their daughters. But there was only silence. Then came a sigh. Not one of relief or happiness, no. This was the long, drawn-out exhale that meant trouble. "Oh, Emily," she said finally. "You know Cassie won't take this well." The words knocked the breath out of me. I blinked, gripping the phone tighter. "What? Did you hear me? I just told you I'm engaged. Ryan and I are getting married." "I heard you," she said. "I'm happy for you, of course. But, well, Cassie's still single. You know how she is. This will crush her." My chest tightened. Of course, Cassie. Somehow it always came back to her. Cassie was my half-sister. Mom married my stepdad Tom when I was 5, and Cassie came along a year later. We shared a house, but never much more than that. Where I was quiet and bookish, Cassie was loud, dramatic, always craving the spotlight. And Mom gave it to her. She always did. I still remember being 7 years old, coming home with a certificate for perfect attendance. I'd worked so hard for it, dragging myself to school even on the mornings I had stomach aches, terrified to miss a day. I placed it proudly on the kitchen table. But before Mom could even look at it, Cassie stormed in crying because a boy at preschool wouldn't share his crayons. Mom swept her up into her arms and whisked her away, my paper fluttering to the floor unnoticed. That was the rhythm of my childhood, Cassie's needs first mine. Somewhere far behind. Birthdays were no different. On my 9th, when I begged for a small party, Mom insisted Cassie needed to be included too, so I blew out candles on a cake that had both our names in frosting. At high school graduation, when I walked across the stage with honors, Mom clapped politely. But when Cassie landed a summer job at a mall clothing store, she cried with pride, telling everyone it was proof Cassie was independent. By the time I was old enough to see the pattern, I had stopped fighting for her approval. I carved out my own path, earned a scholarship, built a career teaching second graders who showered me with drawings of stick figure teachers with big smiles. And then I found Ryan, the first person who ever made me feel like I was more than second best. So standing there with the phone pressed to my ear, listening to my mother's concern, not for me but for Cassie, felt like déjà vu. Like I was a child again, my achievement overshadowed by whatever storm Cassie had brewed that week. "Mom," I said slowly, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. "I'm not calling to talk about Cassie. I'm telling you about my engagement, about my wedding. This is supposed to be a happy moment." "I know," she said quickly, but there was no warmth in it. "I'm happy. Really. But you have to understand Cassie's fragile right now. She's been through so much. If she hears this, I just don't know how she'll handle it." I swallowed hard, my joy drained, replaced with the familiar ache of invisibility. "So what do you want me to do?" "Hide it. Pretend I'm not getting married." Her silence was answer enough. When we finally hung up, I sat staring at the ring on my finger. My excitement dimmed under the weight of her words. Ryan walked into the room, saw my face, and frowned. "What happened?" I forced a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "She said Cassie won't take it well." And in that moment I realized the first cracks had already formed. The happiest day of my life had barely begun, and already my family was turning it into a battlefield. If my mom's reaction to my engagement felt like a cold splash of water, Cassie's reaction was a full-blown storm. I should have expected it, but part of me still hoped foolishly that she'd surprise me. That she'd say, "I'm happy for you, Emily," and mean it. Instead, she staged her own counterattack. 3 weeks after Ryan and I announced our engagement, Cassie called the family together for dinner at Mom's house. Ryan and I showed up thinking it would be a casual meal, maybe an olive branch after Mom's lukewarm response to our news. But as soon as we stepped into the dining room, Cassie beamed like she was on stage. She clinked a spoon against her glass and announced, "Everyone, I have big news. I'm getting married." My fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the plate. "What?" She grinned wider, flashing a cheap little diamond ring that looked like it came from the mall kiosk. "Jake proposed last night. We're tying the knot in March." March. That was barely 3 months away. Mom gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "Oh, Cassie, that's wonderful." She stood up and hugged her so tightly I thought Cassie might suffocate. Then she turned, beaming at me like she was daring me to object. "Isn't this amazing, Emily? 2 weddings?" I forced my lips into something resembling a smile. "Congratulations!" My voice was flat and Cassie noticed. She smirked. "Don't be jealous, sis. Some of us just move faster than others." The jab stung. Ryan squeezed my knee under the table, silently reminding me not to rise to it. For the rest of dinner, Mom gushed over Cassie's whirlwind romance. She described Jake as such a catch even though none of us had met him. Cassie went on and on about how it was meant to be, how she and Jake were soulmates who just knew. I sat there picking at my food, wondering how she could be so reckless. But I bit my tongue. If Cassie wanted to marry a near stranger after 3 months, fine. It wasn't my life to live. What I didn't realize then was that Cassie wasn't just rushing into marriage for herself. She was doing it to compete with me. Her wedding was a chaotic blur from start to finish. I watched from the sidelines as she blew through Mom's savings on a dress that cost more than her car, ordered centerpieces she couldn't afford, and fought with vendors until some refused to work with her. But when the day came, Mom acted like it was the second coming. I stood in the church pews, Ryan's hand in mine as Cassie strutted down the aisle. Her grin was wide, but her eyes kept darting toward me. Every time someone praised her dress, her ring, her big day, she'd glance back to see if I was watching. It was less about marrying Jake and more about proving something to me. I clapped politely, smiled in the photos, and kept my thoughts to myself. But inside I was sick with dread. I knew Cassie, and I knew this wouldn't end well. I didn't have to wait long. 2 months after their honeymoon, the cracks exploded into full fractures. Jake was caught cheating with Cassie's best friend, no less. The story spread fast. Small towns have a way of making gossip travel like wildfire. By the time Cassie called me crying, half the county already knew. "Can you believe this?" she sobbed into the phone. "After everything I gave up for him, after I trusted him, he does this to me." I tried to comfort her. "I'm sorry, Cassie. That's awful. You don't deserve that." But she cut me off with a bitter laugh. "Of course this happened. Ever since your engagement, nothing's gone right for me. Do you know how humiliating this is? Everyone's talking about how perfect your relationship is while mine falls apart." Her words stunned me. "Cassie, my engagement didn't make Jake cheat on you. Don't you get it?" she snapped. "If you hadn't announced your wedding, I wouldn't have felt like I had to rush mine. You set this in motion." I sat in silence, my stomach sinking. She wasn't just hurt, she was blaming me. After that call, she stopped picking up when I reached out. My texts went unanswered, my voicemails ignored. When she did respond, it was with icy one-liners. "Glad things are going so perfectly for you." Or, "Must be nice to have your fairy tale while I'm living in a nightmare." Then came the rumors. A cousin called me one night, whispering, "Emily, I don't know what's going on, but Cassie's been saying you rubbed your engagement in her face just to make her look bad. She says you don't care about her feelings." I hung up and stared at the wall, fury and disbelief boiling inside me. How could she twist this into being my fault? I hadn't flaunted anything. I'd tried to be supportive even when she rushed into a marriage that screamed disaster. The whispers spread quickly. At church, an older relative gave me a pitying look and said, "You know, sometimes it's better to wait. Not everyone heals at the same pace." I bit back my anger and walked away. Everywhere I turned, Cassie was painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. And Mom, she ate it up. Whenever I tried to talk about my wedding plans, she'd change the subject, or sigh heavily as if I was being insensitive. By late fall, I was exhausted. I felt like I was wading through quicksand every step forward in my life, dragging me deeper into Cassie's drama. Ryan tried to keep me focused, reminding me that our wedding was about us, not her. But Cassie's shadow stretched long. The breaking point came at Thanksgiving. Mom had hosted the whole family at her house, and Ryan and I showed up hoping for just one evening of peace. Cassie barely looked at me all night, instead sulking in the corner with a glass of wine. Every time I laughed with a cousin or mentioned something about our wedding, I felt her eyes boring into me. After dinner, I walked past the kitchen and froze. Cassie was standing with Mom and 2 aunts, her voice low but bitter. If Emily really loved me, she hissed, she'd cancel her wedding. My heart stopped. Cancel my wedding? For her, Mom didn't argue. She just rubbed Cassie's back like she was soothing a child. "I know, sweetheart. I know." I stood there in the hallway, blood pounding in my ears, realizing just how far this game had gone. Cassie wasn't just jealous, she was determined to make my happiness her battlefield. And Mom was ready to let her. I turned away before they could see me, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. For the first time in my life, I wasn't just the overlooked daughter or the patient sister. I was a target, and something inside me knew this war was only getting started. The weeks after Thanksgiving felt like living in a pressure cooker. I thought overhearing Cassie tell my mom that I should cancel my wedding was the worst it could get. I was wrong. That was just the beginning. 2 days later, my phone lit up with Mom's name. I hesitated before answering, but against my better judgment, I picked up. "Emily," she said, her voice syrupy sweet, the kind she used when she was about to say something ugly. "I've been thinking. Don't you think it might be considerate to hold off on the wedding?" I blinked. "Hold off? What do you mean?" "Well, Cassie's still hurting. You know how devastated she is after the divorce. Planning a big celebration right now, it just feels like rubbing salt in her wounds." My stomach twisted. "Mom, we've been planning this for months. The venue is booked, deposits are paid. We're not canceling." "You wouldn't have to cancel." She backpedaled quickly. "Just scale it down. Maybe a small ceremony in a church. Something simple. If you really cared about family, you'd wait. Cassie's not ready to watch you be happy yet." Her words hit me like a slap. Not ready to watch you be happy, as if my joy was some crime against my sister. I'm not postponing my wedding, I said firmly. This isn't about Cassie, this is about Ryan and me. Her sigh was dramatic, almost theatrical. You've always been so stubborn. I thought I raised you to put family first. The conversation ended with me hanging up my hands, shaking. Ryan found me pacing the kitchen phone still in hand. What happened? He asked, worry written all over his face. She wants me to postpone the wedding, I said, my voice cracking. Because Cassie can't handle it. Ryan's jaw tightened. You've got to be kidding me. I wish I was. He reached for my hands, steadying me. Emily, listen to me. This is our day, not theirs. Don't let them guilt you into giving it up. I wanted to believe him. I really did. But Mom wasn't done. Over the next few weeks, the calls kept coming. Always the same theme, always the same words. If you cared about family, you'd wait. Cassie's heartbroken. Don't you think it's insensitive? You can still get married, but it doesn't have to be such a big production. Each time my resolve hardened, but so did the exhaustion. I'd hang up the phone and feel like I'd been wrung out like a dishcloth. One night after the third call in a week, I collapsed onto the couch beside Ryan. I don't know how much more of this I can take. He rubbed my shoulders gently. You shouldn't have to take any of it. Emily, you've spent your whole life putting Cassie first. When's it your turn? His words opened a floodgate of memories. I thought about my 9th birthday when Mom decided it was only fair to let Cassie blow out the candles too. My cake had both our names in pink icing even though it was my day. I thought about my high school graduation when I walked the stage with honors, and Mom clapped politely. But later that summer when Cassie landed a minimum wage job at the mall, Mom cried with pride and told everyone her baby was independent now. I thought about my college scholarship, how I moved 3 hours away and sent postcards home only to hear Mom say, Cassie misses you so much. Couldn't you transfer somewhere closer? Every milestone of mine had been overshadowed, minimized, or sacrificed for Cassie. And now my wedding, the one day that was supposed to be mine, was being threatened too. I clenched my fists. Not this time. Ryan kissed the top of my head. That's my girl. But Cassie wasn't content to let Mom do the dirty work forever. By December, she started playing her own games. She sent me texts dripping with passive aggression. Must be nice to have everything go perfectly for you. Or, don't you think January is kind of a weird time for a wedding? Feels like you picked it just to rub it in my face. I ignored them at first, but they kept coming. Then she started leaving long voicemails, her voice cracking with fake tears. Emily, I don't know how you expect me to heal when you're shoving your perfect life in my face. I can barely breathe thinking about your wedding. It's killing me. But I guess you don't care about your sister's feelings. I'd play them for Ryan and he'd roll his eyes. She's manipulating you. Don't let her win. But her words still wormed their way into my chest, feeding the old wounds of being overlooked and accused of selfishness. The worst part was how Mom and Cassie fed off each other. One night, Mom called and said Cassie cried all night after seeing your wedding invitations. Do you really want to hurt her like this? The very next day, Cassie texted Mom so upset about how cold you've been. I don't know how you can live with yourself. It was like they were tag-teaming me, breaking me down piece by piece. By the time Christmas rolled around, I was raw, stretched thin. When my Aunt Laura invited the whole family for dinner, I almost said no. But Ryan convinced me. It'll be good to see the people who actually support you. Don't let Cassie and your mom scare you into hiding. So, we went. Dinner started off civil enough. I chatted with cousins, laughed with Aunt Laura, and for the first time in weeks, I felt almost normal. Cassie sat at the far end of the table, sipping wine, avoiding my eyes. I thought maybe, just maybe, we'd get through the night without drama. But Cassie never misses an opportunity. When the conversation shifted to wedding plans, my flowers, my dress, the playlist, Cassie let out a loud, theatrical sigh. Must be nice to waste all that money on a party when some people can barely pick up the pieces of their lives. The table went silent. My cheeks flushed, but I forced myself to ignore her. A few minutes later, as I laughed with my aunt about a childhood memory, Cassie slammed down her glass. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "I can't believe how cruel people can be," she said, her voice breaking. Everyone turned to her. "What's wrong, honey?" Mom asked, already rushing to her side. Cassie buried her face in her hands. "It's just, I've been through so much this year. And now I have to sit here and listen to Emily talk about her perfect wedding like nothing else matters. She knows how much pain I'm in, but she doesn't care. She's flaunting it, rubbing it in my face." My jaw dropped. My chest burned with fury. Mom rubbed Cassie's back, glaring at me. "She's right, Emily. You need to be more considerate. You have no idea how hard this has been for her." I felt every eye in the room on me, waiting for me to apologize, to shrink back into the quiet, obedient daughter I'd always been. But something inside me snapped. I stood, my voice shaking but loud enough to cut through the silence. "This wedding has nothing to do with Cassie. Ryan and I have been planning this for a year. If she's upset, that's not my fault. Maybe she should take responsibility for rushing into a bad marriage instead of blaming me for her problems." Gasps rippled around the table. Mom's eyes went wide. Cassie's tears dried instantly, replaced by pure rage. "How dare you!" she spat, her voice low and venomous. "You don't know what it's like to have your life fall apart. You've had everything handed to you, your scholarship, your boyfriend, your perfect little life. You've never had to struggle." I clenched my fists, heat rising in my throat. "You're right, Cassie. I don't know what it's like to have my life fall apart, because I don't make impulsive decisions just to compete with other people. Maybe if you spent less time being bitter and more time working on yourself, you wouldn't be in this situation." The room froze. Forks clinked against plates. My aunts and cousins stared wide-eyed, unsure of what to say. Ryan slid his hand into mine, squeezing gently. "We're leaving," he said softly. I didn't argue. We walked out into the cold December night, my heart pounding, my body trembling with a mixture of fear and relief. For the first time, I had said what I'd been holding in my entire life. But as the front door shut behind us, I knew this wasn't the end. Not by a long shot. Cassie wasn't going to let me get away with calling her out, and Mom wasn't going to forgive me for finally breaking the script. This was only the beginning of the war. The morning after the Christmas dinner, I woke up to my phone buzzing on the nightstand. For a second, I thought maybe one of my students' parents was texting me. It wasn't unusual for someone to forget winter break meant their kid's teacher was officially off duty. But when I rolled over and squinted at the screen, my heart sank. It was from Mom. "You owe your sister an apology." That was it. No good morning, no how are you, no acknowledgement of how Cassie had hijacked dinner last night with her crocodile tears. Just a command, sharp and cold. I sat up, my chest tightening as I reread the message. My stomach churned. Apologize for what? For daring to defend myself after being painted as the villain in front of our entire family, for refusing to let Cassie spin her failures into my sins. My hands shook with fury, but beneath the anger was that old familiar ache of guilt. Mom's words carried a weight I'd been conditioned to bear since childhood. Every time Cassie had cried, I'd been the one told to be quiet, to give in, to make peace. Every time Cassie had failed, I'd been expected to shrink so she could shine. And now here I was again, a grown woman with a wedding of my own on the horizon, being told to kneel at my sister's altar of victimhood. I wanted to throw the phone across the room. Instead, I shoved it under my pillow, buried my face in my hands, and sat there until the tears came hot and unbidden. I hated myself for crying, but I couldn't stop. Ryan stirred beside me. "Emily." His voice was groggy, but when he rolled over and saw my face, he sat up immediately. "What happened?" Wordlessly, I handed him the phone. He read the text, his jaw tightening. Then he looked at me with that steady calm that had carried me through so many storms. "You don't owe her anything," he said. "But she's my mom." The words cracked in my throat. "She's supposed to be your mom," he corrected gently. "But she's acting like Cassie's mom first and yours second. And she has been your whole life. You don't have to keep letting her." I shook my head, overwhelmed. If I cut them out, I'll be the villain. They'll say I'm selfish, that I tore the family apart. Ryan took my hands, squeezing them firmly. "Emily, they already say that. No matter what you do, it'll never be enough. At some point, you have to stop playing their game." His words settled over me like a weighted blanket, heavy but grounding. He was right. I had spent my entire life contorting myself into shapes that pleased them, and it had never been enough. And now, even on the brink of my wedding, I was being asked to bow to Cassie's chaos again. I wiped my cheeks, steadied my breathing, and whispered the truth I'd been terrified to admit out loud. "I think I need to uninvite them." Ryan's eyes softened with both sadness and relief. "I've been thinking the same thing. It's going to hurt, but if you don't, they're going to ruin everything. And you deserve better than that." We sat in silence for a moment, the enormity of the decision sinking in. Then I pulled my laptop from the nightstand drawer, flipped it open, and stared at the blank email screen. I typed slowly at first the words deliberate, measured. "Mom, Cassie. Over the past several months, your actions have made it clear that you are not supportive of my upcoming wedding. From spreading rumors to attempting to guilt me into canceling the celebration, your behavior has caused me immense stress and heartbreak. I've tried to be understanding, but I can't continue to allow this toxicity into what should be the happiest time of my life. For that reason, I've decided to uninvite you both from the wedding. This was not an easy choice, but it's necessary for my peace of mind and for Ryan's and my future together. I wish you the best, but I need to protect myself from further harm." I sat back, staring at the message. My finger hovered over the mouse. "Are you sure?" Ryan asked softly. I swallowed hard. "Yes." With one click, I hit send. For a moment, nothing happened. The room was quiet except for the low hum of the heater. Then a wave of relief crashed over me, surprising in its intensity. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. But the peace didn't last long. Within hours, the responses came flying in. Mom's reply arrived first, a tidal wave of guilt and theatrics. "I never thought my own daughter would betray me like this. You've chosen a man over your family. Do you know how much I've sacrificed for you? Your father would be ashamed if he were alive to see this. You're cold-hearted, Emily. You're tearing this family apart." I closed the laptop before I could cry again. Cassie's email came next, dripping with venom. "You've always been jealous of me, and now you're punishing me for being honest about my feelings. You think this wedding makes you better than me, but it won't last. You'll regret this when you realize you destroyed your family just to play princess for a day." I didn't reply to either. But they weren't done. The calls and texts started rolling in from cousins, uncles, even family friends. My Uncle Greg left a voicemail. "Emily, you're being immature. She's your sister. Families fight, but they forgive. Let it go before it's too late." A cousin I barely spoke to texted, "I can't believe you'd do this to your own mother. She loves you. You need to apologize." It was like Mom and Cassie had mobilized an army, each soldier parroting their sob story. I felt battered from all sides, like I was standing in the middle of a battlefield with no shield. But in the chaos, a few voices broke through, sharp and clear. My Aunt Laura called me that evening. "Emily," she said, her voice firm. "I want you to hear me. I am proud of you. You've put up with their nonsense for too long. It's about time you stood your ground." I blinked back tears. "You really think I'm not crazy for doing this?" She snorted. "Crazy, no. Brave. You've done what I've wanted to see you do since you were a little girl. Stand up for yourself. Don't let anyone make you second-guess that." Then Megan, my cousin, who had always been more like a sister to me, sent a long text. "Don't listen to them. Everyone who knows you, the real you, is on your side. Cassie has been toxic for years. You're not wrong to protect your peace. I'll stand with you no matter what." Her words were like a balm to my soul. For the first time in days, I felt steady on my feet. Still, the backlash didn't completely fade. Family dynamics have a way of twisting themselves into knots, and Cassie was a master at pulling strings. A week later, Megan called me, her voice low and urgent. "Emily, you need to know what Cassie's saying now." I braced myself. "What is it this time? She's telling people that the reason you uninvited her is because you're jealous. She says you found out Ryan has feelings for her and you're trying to cover it up." My stomach lurched. "What I know, it's insane," Megan said quickly. "No one in their right mind believes it. But you know, Cassie, she'll spin it until someone does." For a moment, I couldn't speak. The room tilted, bile rising in my throat. It was one thing for Cassie to claim I was selfish or jealous or cruel, but to drag Ryan into her lies, to smear the one person who had stood by me through everything, that was a new level of low. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, my voice shaking. "She's really saying that?" "Yes," Megan said. "And I don't think she's going to stop." I closed my eyes, fury boiling in my veins. Cassie had declared war, and now she was taking aim at the one thing she couldn't stand, to see me hold on to love that was real, steady, and lasting. I hung up the phone, my heart pounding. The battle lines had been drawn, and I knew this was only going to get uglier. Because if Cassie thought she could rip Ryan and me apart with her lies, she had no idea just how far I was willing to go to protect what was mine. It was a Thursday evening in early January when everything shifted. The wedding was only 2 weeks away, and despite the chaos of the last month, Ryan and I had finally found a fragile rhythm. We were busy with last-minute details, finalizing the seating chart, confirming the florist, double-checking with the DJ. For a brief moment, it felt like life was starting to steady. Then Ryan's phone buzzed. We were on the couch half-watching some cooking competition show. He glanced at the screen, and I noticed the way his face changed, relaxed to tense in an instant. His jaw tightened, his brows furrowed. "What is it?" I asked. He hesitated, then turned the screen toward me. It was a text from Cassie. "Hey, Ryan. I know things are tense right now, but I really need someone to talk to. You're the only one who understands." I felt my stomach drop. "Why is she texting you?" "I don't know," he said flatly. "She's never texted me before. I barely have her number saved." He didn't reply. We both agreed to ignore it. Maybe I told myself she was just spiraling and reaching for attention. Maybe this would be the end of it. But it wasn't. The next night, another message came. "I know you probably think I'm awful right now, but I'm really struggling. I feel like no one sees me. Thank you for always being so kind, even when Emily isn't." My chest burned. Even when Emily isn't, I snapped. "She's trying to pit you against me." Ryan looked me straight in the eye. "I'm not falling for it. Don't worry." Still, we decided to save the messages' screenshots neatly organized in a folder on his phone. Just in case. By the end of the week, the messages had escalated. "I don't know how to say this, but I feel like we have a connection. I can't stop thinking about you. I think I have feelings for you." Ryan put his phone down like it was contaminated. "Okay, that's enough." He showed me the screen, his face pale with disgust. "Emily, she's lost it." I grabbed the phone, my hands trembling as I read the words again. My vision blurred with rage. This wasn't just Cassie being dramatic. This was deliberate, calculated. A knife aimed at the heart of my relationship. "She knows we're getting married in less than 2 weeks, I whispered, "and she's trying to wedge herself between us." Ryan reached for my hand. "She can't. I love you. She's not even a blip on my radar." I nodded, swallowing hard. But it wasn't enough to ignore it anymore. Cassie had crossed a line, and I wasn't going to let her rewrite the narrative. That night, I opened my laptop and composed another email, this one not just to Mom, but to a few other family members too. I attached the screenshots, my heart pounding as I typed. I've done my best to stay quiet, but I can't let this continue without clarity. Attached are messages Cassie has been sending to Ryan. This is why she is not invited to the wedding. This behavior is manipulative and deeply disrespectful. I've tried to protect my peace, but this crosses a line. I hope you understand now why I had to make this decision. I hit send and sat back, my whole body buzzing with adrenaline. The responses started within the hour. Aunt Laura replied first. I'm shocked, but I'm not surprised. Emily, you did the right thing. She's been spiraling for years. You owe her nothing. Megan texted me in all caps. Oh my God, good for you for exposing her. She's finally shown her true colors. But then Mom's email came. Long, winding, and utterly predictable. Emily, you're misinterpreting. Cassie is hurting. She's been through so much, and sometimes people say things they don't mean when they're desperate for comfort. How dare you assume the worst of your own sister? Ryan probably misunderstood her intentions. I can't believe you'd try to paint her as some villain when all she needs is compassion. I slammed the laptop shut, my hands shaking. She'll never believe me, I said to Ryan, tears burning behind my eyes. No matter what Cassie does, Mom will defend her. Always. Ryan pulled me into his arms, steady and strong. Then stop trying to make her believe you. You don't need her validation. You know the truth. I know the truth. That's enough. But part of me still ached. I wanted so badly after all these years for Mom to finally choose me, to see me, to stand by me. And once again, she didn't. The next few days were a blur of whispers and fallout. Cousins called to tell me Cassie was spinning new stories, that Ryan had led her on, that I was insecure and jealous, that I was uninviting her because I couldn't handle the truth. Each rumor was more absurd than the last, but I knew how gossip worked. Some people would believe her, or at least pretend to, for the sake of keeping the peace. By the second week of January, I was raw but resolute. I refused to let them poison the one day that was supposed to be mine. So Ryan and I sat down with the venue manager. I need to make something clear, I told her, my voice firm in a way that startled even me. My mother and sister are not invited. They've been harassing me for months. If they show up, I want them removed immediately. The manager nodded sympathetically. We can handle that. But I wasn't done. I'm hiring security. 2 guards minimum. I don't want to take any chances. Ryan squeezed my hand under the table, pride and sorrow mingling in his eyes. Whatever makes you feel safe. Walking out of that meeting, I felt a steel resolve settle into me. For the first time, I wasn't the overlooked daughter. I wasn't the quiet sister who swallowed her anger to keep the peace. I was a woman drawing a line in the sand. As we pulled into our driveway, I turned to Ryan, my voice steady, cold, unyielding. They're not going to ruin this for me. The battle wasn't over, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this time I was ready to fight. The morning of my wedding dawned bright and clear, the kind of cold January day where the sun shines sharp against the frost. When I stepped into the bridal suite at the venue, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. The chaos, the rumors, the endless guilt trips, all of it seemed far away as my bridesmaids buzzed around me, laughing and sipping mimosas. My dress hung by the window, ivory satin glowing in the sunlight. I'd dreamed of this moment since I was a little girl, and despite everything, it was finally here. For the first time in weeks, I believed maybe, just maybe, I could have my perfect day. Ryan and I had decided on a first look before the ceremony. When I walked into the garden and saw him standing there, his face lit with nervous excitement, everything else melted away. The moment our eyes met, the noise of family drama, the months of tears, the endless texts, it all faded into silence. It was just us. He turned, his breath catching when he saw me, and I thought, this is what matters. Only this. We kissed, laughed, took 100 photos. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of Cassie. I wasn't afraid of Mom. Nothing could touch me. Or so I thought. 30 minutes before the ceremony, I was back in the bridal suite, touching up my lipstick, when Amanda, my maid of honor, burst through the door. Her face was pale, her chest heaving. "Emily," she gasped. "They're here." My stomach plummeted. "Who?" She didn't need to answer. I knew. "Your mom and Cassie," she said anyway. "They're outside at the gate. Security stopped them, but they're making a scene. The blood drained from my face. What do you mean, a scene? Amanda hesitated, as if choosing how much to tell me. Your mom's crying, saying she just wants to see her daughter get married. Cassie's? Well, she's screaming. She's telling everyone you're a horrible person, that you've abandoned your family. Guests are starting to hear it. The room spun. My bridesmaids shifted uncomfortably, whispering. I grabbed the edge of the vanity to steady myself. This is exactly why I uninvited them, I said through gritted teeth. Amanda looked at me wide-eyed. What do you want me to do? I forced my breathing steady. Nothing. Don't let them see me. Let security handle it. If we go out there, it just gives them the attention they want. She nodded reluctantly and slipped back out. For the next 10 minutes I sat frozen, the faint sound of shouting carrying through the walls. I couldn't make out the words, but I didn't need to. I could picture it, Mom's trembling sobs, Cassie's shrill voice tearing into anyone who would listen. My heart pounded, every nerve on fire. This was supposed to be my sanctuary, my day, and still they had found a way to invade it. Finally, Amanda returned, her expression grim. They're refusing to leave. The venue manager offered to call the police, but they're worried it'll cause an even bigger scene. Security's keeping them in the parking lot for now. My throat tightened. Did any guests hear them? She nodded slowly. A few, but most people just rolled their eyes. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, and forced myself to let it go. I would not give them the satisfaction of ruining this for me. When the music finally swelled and I stepped into the aisle, everything else disappeared. The guests rose, smiling. The flowers glowed in the winter sunlight, and Ryan stood at the altar with tears in his eyes. My father's absence ached, but Aunt Laura, proud and steady, walked me down the aisle, squeezing my hand in silent solidarity. The ceremony was flawless. Every word of our vows felt carved into my soul. When Ryan slipped the ring onto my finger and kissed me, the world blurred into light and love. The applause that followed drowned out every echo of Cassie's screams outside. For the first time in months, I felt whole. The reception that followed was a dream. The room glowed with string lights, laughter bubbled through the air, and the dance floor pulsed with joy. Ryan and I swayed through our first dance, his forehead pressed to mine, and I thought, we made it. They didn't win. But peace in my family never lasts. Halfway through the evening, as I laughed with friends at the edge of the dance floor, Megan slipped up beside me. Her face was pale, her voice low. You won't believe what Cassie just did in the parking lot, she whispered. The blood drained from my face. My fork clattered against my plate. What? I asked, my voice barely audible over the music. Megan swallowed hard. She glanced around, lowering her voice further. She tried to crash the reception in a wedding dress of her own. The air in the room seemed to vanish. My heart lurched, pounding against my ribs. A wedding dress. My sister had shown up to my wedding in a white gown. I gripped the table for balance, my vision swimming. Around me, the laughter of my guests carried on, oblivious. In that moment, I knew the war wasn't over. Cassie wasn't finished, and whatever she was planning next would make everything before look tame. The morning after the wedding, I woke with my head spinning, not from champagne but from the sheer weight of everything that had happened. My body was sore from dancing, my cheeks ached from smiling, but my heart felt heavy with the memory of Megan's whispered words. Cassie showed up in a wedding dress. When Ryan stirred beside me, I studied his face in the quiet hotel room light. Peaceful. Mine. Against all odds, we had gotten married. We had stood in front of the people who mattered and promised each other forever. Cassie hadn't stopped it. Mom hadn't derailed it. They hadn't won, but the fallout was just beginning. By noon, my phone was buzzing with messages from cousins and friends who'd attended. Word had spread fast. Cassie had been outside the venue shrieking at security while Mom wept theatrically beside her. Guests walking in had heard her yelling about how I was abandoning family, how Ryan had brainwashed me, how she was the only one brave enough to stand up and protect the family's honor. Protect the family's honor. The irony made me laugh out loud, bitter and sharp. Cassie, the same sister who had tried to flirt with my fiancé, who had humiliated herself with a rushed marriage that imploded in weeks, was now spinning herself as some martyr fighting for morality. Most of my guests thankfully saw it for what it was: pathetic. Megan texted me later. "Don't worry, people were rolling their eyes. Honestly, it just made you look stronger for keeping them out." At the reception itself, the support had already started pouring in. Aunt Laura wrapped me in a hug after dinner, whispering, "I've never been prouder of you. You showed everyone last night who you really are, strong, steady, and unwilling to let anyone trample you anymore. Even distant relatives I barely spoke to came up to me, some sheepish, some bold. We didn't know it was that bad," one cousin admitted. "But after last night, we see it. You did the right thing." Their words didn't erase the years of neglect, or the ache of my mother choosing Cassie yet again, but they gave me something I hadn't expected: validation. For once, people weren't swallowing Cassie's story whole. For once, they were seeing me. Still, when Ryan and I packed our bags for a short honeymoon getaway, I couldn't quite shake the gnawing unease. Cassie had always been relentless. She didn't let go of grudges, she sharpened them. What would she do next? The answer came sooner than I thought. 3 days after the wedding, my phone lit up with Megan's name. "Hey," I answered, smiling. "You're not going to tell me she's planning another stunt, are you?" Megan's laugh was short, breathless. "Oh, Emily, you won't believe this one." I sat down on the edge of the bed. "What happened? Cassie and your mom had a massive fight. Like screaming, glass-shattering fight." My heart skipped. "What?" "Over what?" "Over the wedding," Megan said. "Apparently Cassie went off on your mom, accusing her of failing to stop it. She told Marianne it was her fault you got married. She said your mom should have been more forceful, that she let you walk all over the family." I blinked, stunned. Cassie blamed Mom. "Oh yeah, she lost it. Said your mom ruined her life, that she was supposed to be the golden child, not you. She even accused Marianne of betraying her by not chaining you to the house, or something equally dramatic." I pressed a hand over my mouth, a laugh bubbling up despite myself. It was absurd, tragic, and yet so perfectly Cassie. Megan's tone shifted, hushed and gleeful. "And here's the kicker," Marianne finally snapped. She yelled back that she was tired of Cassie's drama, tired of cleaning up her messes, and that she needed to take responsibility for her own life. Then she told Cassie to pack her stuff and get out. I nearly dropped the phone. She kicked her out. For real, Megan confirmed. "Cassie's staying with some friend right now." "But Emily?" I've never seen Marianne so angry. It was like years of pent-up frustration exploded all at once. She actually chose herself for once. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process. My mom, who had defended Cassie through every disaster, who had coddled her every tantrum, who had spent my entire life reminding me I came second, had finally drawn the line. Ryan walked into the room, raising an eyebrow at my expression. I put Megan on speaker. "Say that again?" Megan laughed. "Cassie's out. Your mom kicked her out of the house. Their little toxic team. Over." Ryan let out a low whistle. Well, didn't see that coming. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me. For months I had braced myself against Cassie and Mom as a unit, convinced they were inseparable, unbeatable. And now that alliance had imploded from the inside. Part of me wanted to feel vindicated, even triumphant. This was karma in action. Their cruelty had eaten them alive, turning them against each other. But another part of me felt hollow. Because as much as I hated to admit it, I had always harbored a small, fragile hope that maybe, just maybe, my mother's loyalty to Cassie would falter long enough for her to turn to me. To finally see me. To choose me. Instead, she had cut Cassie loose, not to protect me, but because she was tired. And though Cassie's downfall should have satisfied me, it only highlighted the truth: I had been collateral damage in their war for years. Megan's voice pulled me back. "Emily, you still there?" "Yeah," I said quietly. "I'm here." Listen, she continued, her tone softening. I know this doesn't fix everything, but it's something, and the whole family sees now what you've been dealing with. You don't have to explain anymore. After we hung up, I sat in silence, staring out the window at the snow drifting across the street. For the first time, their chaos didn't touch me. Their drama was theirs alone. And yet, as I pressed my head against Ryan's shoulder, one thought lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. For the first time, their chaos doesn't touch me anymore. But I wonder what happens to them now. After Megan's call, the story of Cassie and Mom's blowout spread quickly through the family grapevine. It was almost surreal hearing cousins whisper about how Cassie had been thrown out, about how Marianne had finally screamed that she was done coddling her. For weeks they'd stood together like an unbreakable wall united against me. Now they were rubble. I should have felt triumphant. And in some ways I did. Their implosion meant I no longer had to brace myself for their next attack, no longer had to wait for the next guilt-laden phone call or the next rumor whispered at a family gathering. But mostly I felt tired. Tired of the games, tired of the war, tired of being dragged into chaos I hadn't asked for. So I made the choice that had been waiting in my chest for years. I blocked them both. It was almost anticlimactic, just a few taps on my phone, a few clicks on social media. Numbers disappeared, notifications silenced. Their voices, so loud, so sharp, so constant, went quiet. The first morning I woke up without a single text from Mom, without a single voicemail dripping with Cassie's self-pity. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and just breathed. The silence wasn't empty. It was holy. Ryan noticed the change immediately. "You're lighter," he said one evening as we curled up on the couch. "Like you finally set something down you've been carrying forever." And he was right. For the first time in my life, I wasn't shrinking myself to make space for someone else's drama. I wasn't apologizing for existing. I wasn't choosing between guilt and rage. I was free. Married life with Ryan wasn't perfect. No life is. But it was steady. It was ours. We filled our days with little rituals: Saturday morning pancakes, Sunday walks in the park, late-night debates over which movie to watch. We laughed more than we argued. We built a rhythm, a partnership, a home that was full of love instead of suspicion. There were moments, of course, when the shadows of the past crept in. I'd hear a phrase that reminded me of Mom's voice or catch myself flinching at the thought of Cassie's name. But instead of spiraling, I learned to breathe through it. I reminded myself they don't own me anymore. In the quiet of those early months of marriage, I found myself reflecting often on the girl I used to be, the one who smiled politely when her birthday cake was shared, who swallowed her pride when her accomplishments were minimized, who held her tongue at dinners while her sister stole the spotlight. That girl had been trained to believe she didn't matter, that peace was only possible if she sacrificed herself for others. But the woman I had become, the one who uninvited her own mother and sister from her wedding, who stared down their manipulations and refused to bend, she knew better. She knew peace didn't come from surrender. It came from boundaries, from choosing yourself even when it meant disappointing others. The betrayal I endured, as painful as it was, had become my liberation. By losing the family I thought I needed, I gained the freedom to build the family I chose. Ryan. Our friends. The relatives who showed up for me when it counted. Sometimes Aunt Laura would call and say, "You're breaking the cycle, Emily. Do you realize that you're refusing to pass down what was done to you?" And every time I'd smile through tears because she was right. The dysfunction stopped with me. One evening, a few months after the wedding, Ryan and I stood on our porch watching the sunset bleed across the sky in shades of orange and rose. The air was cool, crisp, with the promise of spring. He slid his hand into mine, warm and sure, and for a long moment we just stood there in silence. I thought of all the nights I had cried, wondering if I would ever be enough for my mother. I thought of every cruel word, every guilt trip, every time I was told to put myself second. And then I looked at Ryan, at the life we were building together, and realized none of it mattered anymore. "This is our family now," I whispered, my voice steady with a peace I had never known before. Ryan squeezed my hand. "Our family," he echoed. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, I knew with absolute certainty I had finally chosen peace. And with that final sunset moment, Emily's chapter of pain turned into one of peace and renewal. If you found yourself holding your breath through her journey, we'd love to hear your thoughts below. What would you have done in her place? Subscribe for more stories like this, and don't forget to leave a comment. We read every comment. Thank you for listening. This has been a story from Revenge Served Cold. We'll see you next time.